Okay, folks, you may have a ratchet that the ratcheting part has stopped working on, and many people have had that experience, and they say they clean the ratchet head. Sometimes that fix it and clean all this out. Now, this is another option. This is what I discovered on this one. I bought this used and I thought it was working when I picked it up, and it turned out it wasn't. So I took it apart, and so this comes apart like almost all the ones you see. So this particular one has a rotating head, so this head's the same no matter which way you put it together because it turns around. So like most of them, this piece fits in here. It's got the washer on top. When you look in it, you can see it's got a pin and then these spring-loaded pins there. That pin there, which you can see is down and flush with the surface, is the axle that this piece rotates around. And so when it's all together, the washer's on it, it's down inside this head, and the snap ring's in there. So this is what's going wrong with these. What happens is somebody uses this ratchet, and instead of using it properly, they side load it when it's in this position. They push it like they're pushing this way or this way for some reason. I don't even know why you would do that, but what happens is side loading it like that spreads these jaws. When those jaws are spread, this piece that the drive shaft rotates back and forth, this is what actually drives the head to go around. It no longer fits tightly between these jaws. See, I've already fixed this, and so it fits so tightly that you can push it in, but it's a tight fit. So pull that back out. When I first took it apart, it was not a tight fit, it was very sloppy. I fixed it by putting it in the vise and carefully, trying over and over to tighten the vise up and bend those jaws back together. Now here's what's happening and why that's an issue. In this piece, this part here, which pivots around this axle, when those jaws are too wide, there's so much clearance that that axle doesn't stay down like you see it here. It actually moves up into the excess clearance, and the bottom of it pulls out of where it's supposed to be anchored in the bottom. And then instead of working properly, because it's in the proper position, it's no longer in position anymore, and it no longer catches on the teeth that are in here, and then it stops working properly. So it turned out all the problems with this, it didn't work at all, was because these jaws have been spread apart by somebody side loading them. And just to talk a little bit about taking it apart, when I first realized that was the problem, I thought I was going to take this whole assembly out. Fortunately, before I started disassembling this, I did watch somebody else working on these problems on YouTube and realized from what they saw that this actually can just be removed from here. There's nothing holding it in. Now, sometimes it seems like it's being held in by that drive shaft end, but if that's the case, while you're trying to pull it out, just bump the tool a little bit to get the drive shaft to rotate a little, and then it'll come loose. And then the same with putting it back together. I've got it in here because I needed two hands, but the same way that, taking it apart, you may have to bump the tool a little bit to get the drive shaft to rotate. When you go to put it back in order to get things to line up, you may have to be pushing it in while you bump the tool a little bit to get the drive shaft to turn. And then it'll slide back into position. Okay, so I've put the ratcheting mechanism in here, and I wanted to point out the problem originally was the extra clearance was letting that axle for the ratcheting part stick up too high and get dislodged on the bottom. So you want to make sure when you put this back together, you've got that flush or below flush with that surface. You want to make sure that whatever of these little spring-loaded pins you had in here are still in there. You didn't lose them. And then you're going to want to put this facing washer back on here. And then you're going to want to put the snap ring back in place. So I got it back together, got the snap ring in, and then we'll test her out. I've tested it with both hands, but I can't do it right now because I'm holding the camera. But yes, it's not slipping. And on the back side, I don't know if I can do this with, there we go, flipped it. And now it's going in the other direction. Like I said, when I got this, it wasn't working properly. And the other giveaway that axle, out now, you know, in retrospect, now that I've worked on it, when I got this, it was really hard to flip that from side to side and to switch directions. And that's because when that axle pin is out and it upsets that geometry in there, there's another part behind that ratchet lever, whatever the thing is called. There's a spring-loaded point behind it, which is what, you know, makes it work, so to speak, depending on which position it's in. And when that axle was out of position, that was not, you know, geometry was screwed up, and that was coming too far out, and it made it hard to switch it from one direction to the other. So you can see how tight the clearances are here now. Before I had bent it back together, you could see a lot of daylight between this fork and this part in here that wiggles back and forth. And now you can't, it's all very tight.